Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Today we are joined by Trent Prall from the city of Grand Junction. Trent, how are you?
Hey, doing well. Thank you very much for having us.
Of course, we're talking very important topics here that involve the city of Grand Junction, specifically transportation projects that are in the works that are going to affect almost everybody here in Grand Junction. So tell me about those projects.
You bet. So first one that starts construction here beginning of February is one that's been identified in a number of different plans since about the late 1990s, early 2000s, and it's our F&a-half Parkway. And that is one that's going to, for this phase, is going to start from 24 Road and working its way east on F&a-half. A lot of people don't know exactly where that is because it doesn't continue across the valley like many of our roads here do, but we are, the first phase will go along the north side of like Regal Cinemas, south side of the Subaru dealership, Timberline, and so forth. So we're going to be constructing a 5-lane arterial road there over to 24.5 and constructing a roundabout there on 24.5 road. Later on next year, we'll start the next phase of that from 24.5 road and continue eastward over to 25 road, and then we work our way down to Patterson Road. And so what that does for our transportation network is really allows for a bypass, if you will, of the Patterson Road, the very congested Patterson Road that we have from 25 Road over to 24 Road. And with all that growth and development that we had happen there in the 1990s and 2000s, now we have a lot more growth. It's happening north of the mall, out there with Community Hospital, Caprock, of course Canyon View Park is a big demand up there, and then Regal and Timberline Bank and City Market and so forth have all pushed a lot of the centroid, if you will, of our growth and development is moving to the north. And so this provides that additional capacity to help keep us moving around our community.
Yeah, and I know that that's one. There's two more that are going to affect everybody. Tell me about those.
There are. So we do have 4th Street and 5th Street in our downtown core. This is part of a study that we worked with on the Downtown Development Authority back in about 2021. And we are going to be working on some pedestrian improvements, bike ped improvements along those corridors, make both of those corridors, as well as all the streets crossing 4th and 5th Street in between Ute Avenue all the way up to North Avenue, make all of those crossings as well as the corridor itself much safer for bikes and pedestrians. And the way we're going to do that is take the existing 2 lanes that we have and diagonal parking on both sides. We're going to narrow that down to 1 lane in each direction, and then have parallel parking on the right-hand side of both of those facilities, and then have a buffered bike lane then up against the curb line. And both curb lines will eventually move out, but in this first phase, we're kind of piloting it with primarily just striping and some vertical delineators, if you will, along both of those corridors to kind of test out that footprint to see if that's going to work for us long term. And if it does, then we have other funding in place here in upcoming years that will come back through and immortalize that in more permanent concrete.
Yeah, you was talking about kind of phases with that project. When can we expect it to be completed versus phase by phase?
So actually on 4th and 5th Street, the intent is to put both of those corridors in that configuration yet this summer. And so starting the beginning of June, we will chip seal both of those streets, eliminating all the striping that's out there right now, and then come back in immediately after that and restripe and put in those delineators that I just mentioned, and be able to set that very quickly on both corridors. And so from the beginning of June, probably through the end of July, mid-August, we should have that all in place. And so we've been working with the Downtown Development Authority on that, as well as downtown merchants that were concerned about some parking concerns, but yet still wanted to make sure we had traffic, be able to accommodate traffic, and especially freight getting in and out of the various alleys and up and down the Main Street there, as well as Colorado Avenue corridors. So yeah, that's another one that we have coming up that's very exciting and will be, game changing for downtown, and be able to get bikes and peds and our new scooter fleet that we're piloting right now up and down and safely through the corridors.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the the expansion and really, thinking about people on bikes and especially scooters too. They're kind of all around. Now, there's one more project that you want to mention. What is that project?
So we also have another, some traffic calming elements that we recently put in here along Main Street. And we had some speeding problems that were prevalent along the Main Street corridor, especially east of, say, 8th Street. And that's right where the kind of the downtown Main Street feel, ends, and it turns into more residential. But it was a super wide street when it was platted back in the 1880s, like 100-foot right-of-way versus 60 or 80, which is more customary. And so that leaves a lot of asphalt. And so we had parking on both sides, and then just one lane each direction. And we had some bike lanes that we put in, but really still really wide feel. And so cars were rather comfortable at higher rates of speed than what we'd had preferred there. And we have a tough time having officers out there on a regular basis. And they can't be out there 24/7. And so we do look at other measures, engineering solutions that we're able to put in and help with slowing motorists down. And so we started that a couple of years ago by putting in buffered bike lanes. So instead of having a 15-foot wide lane, and a bike lane outside of that, we dropped another stripe and some herringbone, some cross hatching in through there, if you will, that narrowed that field of view for motorists down to about a 10 to 11-foot lane down that entire corridor all the way over to 17th. Still had some speeding issues. So about a year ago, we put in some vertical delineation at 14th Street and that narrowed the lanes down even further, but we still had speeding going on in between. We had a number of users there around 13th Street that we were some very young users of our transportation network, and as well as some elderly folks that were wanting to walk and be safe while doing so. But we were definitely struggling with that speeding that was prevalent there. And so here a few weeks ago, we had a neighborhood meeting and got some feedback from some folks on a number of different solutions that were possibilities out there, but really one that we were wanting to try out here and was one we call a mini roundabout. And that's the first one we've had since about 2004 here in the Valley. And anyway, we're excited to see what the impacts of that will be on speed. And we know people are already going slower around that, but it's not near as large as our other roundabouts, which usually have about a 40-foot diameter. Mm-hmm. This one's only 20-foot in diameter, but it causes all drivers to come up to that. And there's, even at night, we got a number of signs and reflectivity out there in the middle of the road. People are a lot more cautious coming into that intersection, slows down, and then comes around and then goes through the 14th elements there. And so part of the neighborhood meeting, we did get some other suggestions that we're going to consider for other implementation, maybe later on this year, next spring, next summer, as we take a look at the effectiveness of this particular installation.
Yep. Well, we are almost out of time, but if anybody wants to put in their input, and they can't make those neighborhood meetings that y'all have or that y'all had, what's a way that, they can let their voice heard, especially if there's, speeding going on in their neighborhood or anything maybe potentially dangerous?
If it's really urgent, obviously 911 is the first call that you make. But if it's not quite that urgent, then yeah, we encourage you to use our report a concern feature that's on our website, and just not very far down on the website, it's a very large button there on that you can click, and we'll dial you right into either speeding or other issues that you may have with the status of our infrastructure, or weeds, or speeding, or a number of different concerns that you may have there. We dial you in, and that goes direct to those departments, and then our communications team helps us keep on top of all that.
Cool. Very important for the city of Grand Junction. Thank you for being here, Trent. We appreciate it. Very, very important topics that we're talking about and going to be talking about all year long. Thank you.
Yep. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I appreciate it. Of course.
Yep.
We'll be back.